for this.
All right. I think it's in my bag, actually. The orange one's in there. Shit. Just posting the Instagrams. How to escape the IRS armbar. The IRS is going to be paying you in a couple days here. I think the first deposits already went out for stimulus for the normal people. All right, today we're going to be going over armbar escapes and attacks. So we'll start with, I think we'll start with attacks actually, and then go into the escapes after, because I want to show a lot of the different armbar attacks. And then it'll be, the escapes will be more relevant because it'll kind of show what you're trying to escape and what you might be up against when it comes to escapes. I think a lot of times like knowing the offense is better than knowing the defense. Like if you know what they're trying to do, then you can kind of intuitively avoid those positions, and that's a pretty powerful thing. So that's what we'll be trying to do first. Did I hit record on there, Emma? It's good, all good, okay. So we're gonna start, let's bow it in. Thanks everyone for coming. I saw there's about 50 people here. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Slow down there, dude. Ready? Here we go. Whoops. So we're going to talk about the armbar. We'll do armbar finishes from the top. So this will be a mounted armbar, so that where you're sitting on the ground and they're on their back. Finishing armbars from the bottom, there's not as many options. There's not as many cool ways to break the grip. The best way that I'm aware of as far as finishing armbars from bottom is the Jujikatami style one that Ronda Rousey does, that a lot of high-level judo guys use from bottom, and it's a really effective way to just get your weight out from underneath them. So we won't be covering those. We'll be covering the mounted armbar finishes, or an armbar where you potentially set it up from the bottom and then you finish from the top. All right? So we're going to look at the armbar itself from mount here. Now, the setup is not as important, but I'll just demonstrate as we go. The main thing is you want to get this elbow pointed directly up. You don't necessarily, I don't really like teaching where you're trying to control the top part of the arm. I want to control from like this bottom half. So getting this elbow up allows you to get your hips close to the armpit immediately. Whereas if you're just hooking here, it's hard to get your hips low enough while still getting your leg over his head. But by driving the arm up and using your chest to get like a support behind the elbow to drive it up, it lets you get your hips into a position that will be a lot more effective to throw your leg over. Then this leg goes straight or to S mount, and then as you fall down, you're bringing this leg over the head so he can't follow you up. And as I'm doing that, he's probably going to be setting up some sort of defense. This is what's called the rear naked choke defense, where he is basically rear naked choking my arm, and then as I bring my leg over the head, he catches it underneath my leg here. So he's got this, oh sorry, he's got this sort of this is blocking the armbar itself. This arm is supported by the back of my knee, and then his hand here is supported by the back of his elbow. So these two factors here make it so that his arm that I'm actually attacking is pretty secure. And we're going to be talking about a lot of the different ways to deal with this position as well as dealing with grips like this, gable grips, or even some of the more weird ones like gripping under my leg like this or like this, and kind of just dealing with some of the defenses here and behind the knee as well. Yeah, and then we'll go into what the defenses are that are really effective that maybe these attacks don't necessarily work as well on, okay? So the first thing we're going to be doing is just talking about how to break these grips. We'll talk about dealing with the rear naked choke defense first. So, of course, the first thing you can do to avoid this is set up arm bars where his arms are disconnected, right? If his hands are connected here and they have the ability to grab each other, that's where the structure becomes very strong. But certain arm bars don't allow for that to happen, like arm bars where it's underneath your armpit. So if I manage to trap his arm here and set up my arm bar like this, you can see how no matter how hard he tries to set up a rear naked choke grip, it's not going to work. You'd kind of have to resort to hitchhiker escape, which is this one where you kind of roll out in that direction. So if you can maintain separation between his arms, it'll be a lot easier for you to finish the arm bar. And this can be done in a few different ways, like when I'm setting it up initially here like this, making sure that I get my hips really close, and then having my S mount, and when he tries to set up the arm bar, actually grabbing his own hand. So if I grab his hand and he tries to do a figure 4 over that, it's actually pretty easy for me to peel his hand away from it. So there's some preemptive stuff you can do, and then if he tries to gable grip over my hand, it's not really gonna be as effective either because I can double up on it with my other hand. So sometimes this palm to palm grip can be pretty effective, but usually I don't worry about that because the breaks for the defenses are so effective that I don't really have to hyper focus on not letting him set it up in the first place. I just really focus on making sure my hips are secure. I get my hips in really close, hit this angle with my foot so I can fall this way safely, and then I like to switch my arms so I can control his legs as I fall down to the ground. And this gives him a free chance to set up whatever kind of armbar defense he wants. But it's at the sacrifice of allowing me to get really good position. So I have really good position now. The arm from the nearest his head is the one controlling the arm. I don't like to finish arm locks with the bottom side arm. So the arm nearest his leg going here, I don't like this as much because my left hand doesn't really do anything. Like I can double it up and like control like this, but other than that, I don't really have any options with my left hand because it's near his head. There's nothing over here. I can push his face or something, I don't know. It's not as effective. Whereas if I attack with the arm nearest his head and I make most of my armbar attacks happen with the arm nearest his head, my right hand is free to do a lot of stuff. It can help me push the elbow to open up this grip even more. I can pull his knees towards me to break his ability to do upas and bridges as well. I can even grab his belt like this. I can open up his lapel and pass the lapel to my hand to get secure grips. There's just so much more I can do with this hand that I think it's a good idea to practice your arm bars with the arm nearest his head as the one controlling, okay? So that's besides the point, because now the setup is going to be dealing with this grip. The very first and easiest way to break an armbar grip open is to focus on this elbow. And if you look at just what's actually happening here, his fingers are around his bicep here. It's locked underneath, and then he's trying to make sure that this hand stays down as tight as it can, because if it were to fully extend, well, then nothing's going to stop it, right? It's just like a little lock he's formed here. So what are the ways I can deal with this? Well, one way would be to lift his hand up and clear it out of the way and get his arm, right? But if it's underneath the leg and I have my arm in, it's going to be hard to do that because my right hand can't really like peel that up easily. And if I open up my leg, he's going to sit up into me and I'm going to be on bottom and lose my control over his head. So what I'm looking for right now is letting him have this grip, and I'm going to do the most simple armbar defense break that there is, and it's just basically it looks like a palm strike directly to his elbow here. Because if you look, his fingers aren't really securing his whole arm. If they were like hyper wrapped around like this move wouldn't work as well. But most people don't do that because they're not thinking about their arm getting pulled out this way. They're thinking about their arm getting pulled up this way, and this is enough usually with just their fingers barely hooked here. So what I'm doing, one, I want to get my hand as deep through on my thigh as I can, because if I'm controlling with just my wrist, look what happens when I lean back. If my hand is too shallow, my arm extends instead of that force getting pushed into his arm here. So by reaching deeper and curling my hand over my thigh, look what happens when I lean back now. All of that force that was bending my arm is going directly into his lock here now. So it creates a more secure grip on his arm with my arm. And as I pull, all that pressure goes into his grip here on his sleeve. And that's what I want. I want there to be tension here. I want him to feel like he has to hold on really tight. And you'll notice I'm crossing my ankles here. And I like to actually cross my ankles. And that's a common myth that you shouldn't, especially in a position like this where he has my leg. Like, he can lift my leg up if my legs are not crossed. He can control my leg and potentially clear it over his head and then escape the position. So in a situation like this, I want to keep his arm locked, and I'll cross my ankles to pinch my knees so he doesn't use that arm to pry open my lock itself. So that's a myth. It's totally fine to cross your legs. Sometimes control is better when you open your knees like this, because if he tries to sit up into me, I can use my knee and push him back down with this motion, right? So now that I've got all the position nice and locked up tight and I'm holding.
Question.
What's up?
Are you peculiar about which
foot goes over?
Yeah.
I don't think it really is the end of the world if you do one or the other, but I'm using my bottom leg over, and I'm just trying to pinch under your shoulder like this. I don't think it matters too much as which leg is on top. Okay. So now I'm trying to pull the arm out. I'm not trying to pull it up, but I want him to think that I'm trying to pull it up directly through his lock. So I'm actually leaning back and putting pressure so it's pulling it directly towards me. So I'm trying to pull it this way out. So if I were to continue pulling and I had super strength and Mihal's grip wasn't as strong as it is, eventually it would slide out like that with enough force, right? But people go for this grip because it's so strong, actually. So as I'm leaning and putting pressure, I'm just using my weight and just kind of leaning into it. I'm not struggling super hard. But as the pressure builds up around this lock, I'm going to wind up my hand and I'm going to palm strike. This isn't going to hurt him, okay? It's just going to create a force to knock this grip loose and break that friction he's gained by grabbing onto his bicep here. So I'm pulling with a lot of force, and then I wind up and I palm strike. This is very effective. That buildup of energy makes it easier to just break it all loose with one little push, right? And a push works just as much as a strike. I'm not really striking him. I'm not like trying to impact the muscle of his arm. I'm just trying to knock it off his hand. And this works very well because of the pressure I'm building up. So I knock it loose, boom, and then immediately that same hand goes under the arm, right? I don't just go here and then try and lean back into this, because this hand, he'll just pull it out, grab his hands together again. You probably won't be able to get it back to the full rear naked, but it'll come to here, and now I have to deal with this lock too. So to avoid that when it's figure forward, I knock it loose with my palm strike just right in front of the elbow, and then I pull back and immediately switch. It's okay to switch once you have the wrist. It's actually better to switch once you have the wrist fully extended, because now, once the wrist is extended, his options for escape are a lot more limited. His options are pretty much only hitchhiker escape. So in this situation, I like to fall back with this hand and then secure with both hands on the wrist to turn his thumb away from the hitchhiker escape. Because if I'm controlling his thumb this way and he tries to hitchhiker escape out, he can only get about that far, right? So I'll still be able to pressure the arm lock. But if I allow his wrist to rotate, now as I try and finish, the more I pull it across, I'm eventually going to lose the position. So the very first armbar break is from here, driving in. And if his elbow's kind of pointed towards you like this, and you're not able to push directly forward, you're pushing it at an angle. So that's why I'm maybe leaning this way a little bit more, to drive it up and away from the lock itself. I don't want to push it this way. That might not work as effectively. So pushing, hooking, and then doubling up on the arm, and then eventually getting to the thumb control so I can bring it this way to finish here. All right, so that's going to be the first armbar defense break. Do you think, Atia says, do you think it's possible to hit an effective armbar from bottom with the open knees concept you showed a few weeks ago, or does it only apply from top position? Yeah, it's mostly a top position move. You definitely don't want to open your knees from bottom. You can still cross your legs, just cross your ankles, but you need to pinch your knees together. I've seen a video saying that the leg on top of the head should be on top, supposedly it keeps them down. That's not true. Like, really, either way is going to work. Putting one foot on top of the other is largely not relevant to the position. So let's go into the next one. So we're going to look at another grip break from the same lock. So this time it's figure four again, but I'm going to be looking at some alternatives here. So this time again, a lot of times you set up the arm bar with the leg side arm controlling, because it's the cross arm, right? So when you do the cross arm control, this is a common armbar setup, but it's important to switch it. So I switch as I get into my position so that I can control the hips and lock around his head or around his hips or legs to make sure he can't drive up into me, okay? So now what I can do is if I'm unable to push this across, what I can do is grab his wrist like this with the bottom arm, all right? So I grab the wrist with the bottom arm, and if you see, I can clear my foot over his head as long as I am turned into him. So as long as I'm turned into him and pushing my weight over him like this, he won't be able to sit up into me. It's actually very difficult for him to crunch up and sit up because I have this leg sitting on him here. There's a helicopter going overhead. Just a second. Just reading some of these comments here. So from this position now, it's okay to take your leg off of his head because he's not able to sit up on you. And if at any point he does try, it's pretty easy to just bring your leg back over and use that to force him back down. But now, once I have this hold secured, I'm going to reach over, clear the leg, and start pulling this up and away. And my goal is to try and just get it across the other arm here. If I can get them in line with each other like this, you can see he can't do the rear naked choke grip anymore. If he tries, it doesn't really work. Even if there's nothing you can do with his right hand either to really do it except to reverse it. He would have to like put it here, which is not going to be very effective because if I can turn the hand this way, I'm going to be able to finish. So from here, I'm not just taking my leg off and pulling. If my weight is too close to his head and I do this, he's going to drive into me and I'm going to get put on bottom and lose a lot of my control. So it's very, very important that when I'm in this position, I'm leaning over and pulling myself. So I'm actually like hugging around his rib cage like this. This keeps my weight over his chest so that when he tries to sit up, he's holding my weight and it's much harder for him to sit up. Then I have to clear my leg completely from the hand. That's why I'm even taking my leg off in the first place. If I could clear it easily right here, I'd do it, but it's pretty tough to do. So I have to clear my leg completely. As I do that, I'm pulling it up and across. Keep control of this hand, and then I'm just sliding this hand up. But as I do it, I block as I get to the wrist, because he's going to be trying to get that rear naked choke grip again. And if I just go here, he might be able to grab it back again. So I have to pull and bring my hand in front. So when he tries to bring that grip back, I'm blocking it, and he won't have the opportunity as I actually lean back, okay? And as long as I keep my weight to this side, which is counterintuitive because you think he wants to sit up into me. Him doing a crunch or a sit-up is going to be very difficult, even with just a little bit of weight on his chest. So just leaning this way just puts that weight over his chest on your leg. So I'm like leaning on my own leg, and that's driving into his chest, and that's enough to keep him down on the ground from this position, as long as my foot is underneath the armpit. If it goes over the arm, this can be a little bit of a problem, but not for long because you're just figure fouring over the face again, and this is a pretty effective armbar finish as well here, or even just keeping it behind the head. He doesn't really have an option to escape. So there's some different things you can do with your legs as well, depending on the situation. So again, here, left arm through. If we start with the right arm through and I try and unwind to the figure four here, this is much more difficult because I can't lean into his chest here because my own arm is like on my leg and it's blocking me from being able to put my weight over the leg. So if I lean here with the right arm through, you can get put on your back. But if the arm that's nearest his head is through and I lean, he can't sit up. So it's kind of a weird thing. But if you have the wrong arm through, it's much easier for him to sit up into you. Okay? It just depends on which arm. If the leg side arm is through, this almost pulls him into me more. It takes weight off his chest, but it looks like a normal armbar. You'd think it's the same or even better because it feels natural. It's not a grip. There's no grip switch. But a good armbar, if you're really looking at the fundamentals of what makes it powerful, is the arm closest to his head, going over this thigh, driving this leg into him, and then scooting my hips as close to his hips as possible while still being tight underneath his arm with this leg. But this leg doesn't really have to do as much. You can even just hook behind the head. Not a big deal. And then when it comes time, if he has this grip, the peel doesn't work, but for the rear naked choke defense, it does work. The peeling rear naked choke defense, I just have to lean in, clear, pull that across, block, bring that back over, And then the hand fight here that happens is actually very easy to win because I have the wrist control. I have this block engaged. There's not really much he can do to fight for his hands back, to connect. He can't even grab his hands together because of this split I've created. As he tries to grab any sort of gable grip or something like that, I can just keep those arms disconnected. And then bring it down. But look how I bring it down. If I don't have the thumb control, I'm not going straight back. Because if I don't have thumb control and I don't go straight back, or I go straight back, he's going to turn the arm. So I always lean to the leg side as I fall. That's just going to stop the initial hitchhiker escape. So I have to lean to this side. Even if he tries to hitchhiker escape, as I lean to this side, it's going to be much harder because this leg is tight around his ribs. And then that'll give me time to straighten out to actually finish. But now I have the wrist control, so if he tries to hitchhiker escape now, he won't be able to. All right? So that's the second arm bar grip break. And we are going to do a bicep crush in here as well. There's one particular really good bicep crush. Well, two good bicep crushes. One good one, one bad one, but they're both cool actually. All right? So let's go into the next one. So this will still be a rear naked choke break because this is the most common, second only to gable grips, all right? So rear naked choke grip, we're going to continue with this one. For this one, it's you do have to switch your hand, okay? So what I'll be doing here is I'm actually going to put so much, it's not a bicep crush, it's actually a forearm crush. So I'm going to be doing a forearm slicer, I guess. Forearm crush, forearm slicer. And it's pretty rare to see forearm slicers. This is one though. So it's one of the few forearm slicers that exists and is very painful. But it can't be done with the head side arm, okay? So this is something that's good to go for when you try to do your normal arm bar, but you don't have an opportunity to switch to the arm nearest his head. So I start my initial arm bar setup with the cross arm. This is going to be the leg that's lowest by his legs, right? And I don't like this leg because it makes it kind of awkward to get to the position. And then if I have it over this side, if I lean, it helps him sit up, right? But if he's holding really tight, I'm not going to be able to switch. Like you can do what's called the threading of the needle, where you connect your hands in a C grip and try and create like a connected rope of your arms to pull it through to the other side. But I found when I try this, when it gets to my hands, I can't get my hands through safely. So I'm not able to like secure it effectively. So if I can't do that, I don't try and switch. From here, I just switch to the forearm slice. And the forearm slice is done by following the same concept, but I still want to try and make sure that he can't turn out or into me. So I have to have a delicate balance where if I feel him bridging this way, I'm like framing with my hand and scooting my hips towards him. That's the key to not getting bridged over, because his bridge power drives me in that direction. So I use my free hand to block to keep him down. But this is purely defensive. It doesn't help me finish the attack. So I have to just be ready to do that, because leaning this way will help him get on top, and then leaning too far this way will actually help him do the bridge escape, whether a hitchhiker or driving up into me on top. So I need to be seated straight when I have this leg side arm through with the arm posted. Then when I see the opportunity, the forearm slice comes from using this part of my wrist. So I move this down to the forearm here. And the tighter he squeezes, the more painful this is going to be, all right? So the more he squeezes here, the better it is. And I'll feel the meat of his forearm kind of getting bit into by the blade of my wrist here. And this wrist turn is what's going to give the power for the actual forearm slice. So now, as I've slid this down, I'm still putting a lot of pressure, like I'm trying to armbar him. It's important that he resists. The more he resists and holds on, the tighter this is going to be. And then from here, I'm bringing my hand up and under, catching at the wrist, not higher. I want it at the wrist. The higher I get it, the better. Like the closer to my hand I get it, the better it is. But I need to make sure that my hand is not just palm on the wrist. I go wrist over wrist. So my wrist is free to bend here and loop like this, not just here. See how this actually reduces the pressure I can put, because if my palm is just here, any pressure I put goes into my wrist joint, and driving in just bends my wrist. But if I go over the wrist, any pressure I put goes directly into his arm. My wrist isn't the weak point anymore. But I have to do the same thing with my other hand. So if my other hand palm is on his wrist, the same thing happens. My wrist is the weak point. So I have to go over both. Wrist over wrist. Yeah, it's like a false grip. That way, all of the pressure leaning back On both sides, it's just bone, like the structure of my bone directly into his forearm meat, and there's no give in the wrist to lose the pressure, right? So I'm here, figure 4 again, here, nice. Slide it down. Here, you're gonna feel it because my wrist is on, or my palm is on my thigh, so I will lose pressure from the wrist bend here. But as I reach under, I can get that eliminated by going over the top, and then I do the same thing on this side, here, loop and loop. And now the pressure comes from doing a little wrist turn here. So I actually compress the forearm into my wrist bone, but right now it's just flat. The wrist, my blade of my wrist is flat, but as I pull tight, I'm gonna rotate my hand like this here, and it'll drive into the forearm as I do that. So I'll keep this super tight. I'll hold my leg super tight as well. I'll compress the wrist and pull, and then drive into the forearm to get him to relieve his grip. And so he's got 2 options. He can tap verbally, or he can just make the pain go away by letting go. So most of the time people feel the pain and they just let go rather than tap. So here I'm driving my wrist into the forearm and compressing. And it seems like it wouldn't be very effective, but it's pretty painful, right, Miha?
It's very painful.
You could gut it out. It's not gonna break his forearm. It's not gonna like split the, well, it might, I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I wouldn't dare.
I won't, you probably, it hurts too much to try and fight through it, okay? And I'm pretty tough, and people have done this to me and I haven't been able to resist the pain. Miha's really tough, and he's telling you right now it's pretty painful. But it has to be done with these false grips. And you have to have that wrist right in the right position. And then the left hand has to compress into it as well. Everything has to compress, I have to lean into it, and then I have to drive my forearm like this. And then I'm not trying to finish that. Once the grip breaks, I switch to armbar. It's just a pressure point to actually break the armbar grip.
I feel like this would either break one bone in here or kind of dislocate your elbow the way you're pulling it.
Yeah, I'm not sure. There's a lot of compression in the joint and then a lot of pressure on the muscle too. But yeah, it's pressuring in there with the bone right here because your wrist is pretty flat. So like right here, there's not much pressure getting exerted, but when I compress everything and your elbow's compressing on my wrist and it's all held in place like that, and then you can't release it, and then I twist my wrist within that, that's where the power comes. So you're using like a torsion force, which is pretty powerful. All right, the third armbar break from the figure 4 grip here. Again, I want to get my left arm through if I can, but if I cannot, it's not the end of the world. It's just a lot harder to balance and a lot harder to maintain top position. Remember, the arm nearest his head is just better control and better finishing ability and more versatility with the free hand. However, it's hard to switch it sometimes. So if you don't get it originally, if you just have the right hand through, that's okay. You can still finish with this. But the palm strike grip's not as effective, but I do have the forearm slicer option, which is nice. But I'm just gonna go left arm through for this one because I really like to be able to lean this way and make sure that he can't sit up into me, and I control matches here. So from this position, I'm gonna be holding his leg either at the near side leg or the cross side leg, or pulling both legs across like this, which is very powerful because if you turn his hips like this, you can see how he can't bridge at all. If he tries to bridge, there's no bridge because I turned his knees towards me. So that's a very powerful movement as well. But as I'm leaning here and he has the figure 4, how am I supposed to break this grip without doing anything? And this is one of my personal favorites because it doesn't require using my hands to break any of the position or knock the position off or do a compression. It's just a simple leg movement that's very easy to do. So I'm leaning, and that makes this leg nice and light, and I'm just gonna put my leg right in front of his elbow. There's a nice ledge here for me to put my leg on. And I do that just by lifting it up and over here. I want to just make sure not to put it too high. If I put it too high and I try and pressure, yeah, my leg is just too bendy in this angle and I can't generate enough power to break the position. But if I throw it up and over more shallow so that it's nearer my knee, like this, he's not going to be able to do anything to counter this position, and I can just straighten my leg. And you'll find that's very powerful because it's pulling directly out in the same way that the palm strike did, but now I have leg power to do it. So I'm just coming up and over here and then driving my leg. And look, it traps his arm up by his shoulder. So now if he tries to reach his hands together, even if he connects with a gable grip here, I have my leg underneath, and this is fine. Like having the leg underneath is really gonna keep him down. So then I can switch to the wrist control here. Whenever someone goes to gable grip, you don't keep pulling at the elbow, because now that doesn't do anything. And now pulling it directly out like we were doing earlier to beat the rear naked choke grip doesn't work, because now this pull is what the gable grip is strong against, directly pulling into it, right? Whereas the rear naked choke grip becomes weak in that direction because it can slide out, but then the gable grip becomes strong, so we have to change the method. So once he switches to gable grip, I have to switch too. And I bring my arm up and over the wrist, but at the same time I get my ribs on this side of his elbow, okay? If I leave him on this side and I try and pull here, it's still pretty hard to break the grip because his arm is just perfectly in alignment with his other arm. He's got good symmetry in his body, he's got a strong grip here. But if I bring his elbow to this side, now it turns it into an Americana pull. So now he's resisting, and he'll feel the pressure that if he lets go, it's gonna break his shoulder, right? Because if he lets go too quickly and I lean back into it, his arm is gonna get twisted in an Americana lock, right? So this is more psychological than anything. It doesn't really give me more power, but it makes him think that if I break this grip, he's gonna immediately get his shoulder torn. And that will actually let people give you the armbar more, okay? So yes, it does have the added benefit of being more of a finishing move if he doesn't respect it, but it also just puts a little bit of fear into him, thinking like, oh wow, my arm is not at a good angle if I don't tap early. So a lot of times when you put the elbow to the outside of the ribs like this, you'll get early taps. You'll get your wrist up, or your elbow up around his wrist, start leaning back, and people will tap right here. They'll say tap, because they know if they let go of their hand, the shoulder's immediately gonna have pressure on it. And if they don't let go, I'm gonna break it eventually, and there'll be a rubber band effect of that snap as I fall into it. So, of course, if you're aware of this technique, it's your responsibility and your duty to not hurt someone's shoulder. So when you put the elbow to this side of your ribs, the leg side, and I grip here, and I do start pressuring, I'm not gonna fall back. I'm just putting enough pressure until he lets go. And when he lets go, I just stay, because I don't need to pull any more than that. He's not gonna re-grip. If he re-grips, I'm just gonna keep going back slowly. And then to make sure that you save their shoulder, you don't lean straight back, you lean towards his legs. Because as I lean towards his legs, that will actually protect his shoulder. So my intention is not to go this way into the Americana, because that will actually allow him to escape. So by driving this way, he can do hitchhiker escape, and that's no good. And by driving straight back, if he lets go, he can't do hitchhiker escape very effectively, but it might hurt his shoulder as I fall right into it. So what I do to just deal with both those options is I still pull in the direction that would be an Americana if I fall back, but then I just fall to my right. And that will stop him from doing hitchhiker escape, it'll stop him from doing sit-up guard, and then it affords me the opportunity to switch to wrist control and keep that thumb isolated. It's more about just breaking the structure of the hold. So this is very strong. It's one of the strongest grips you can do in grappling, wrestling, whatever. This is a strong grip. But by tucking the elbow here, now it's like this arm becomes a weird noodle. And it's like I'm not pulling directly into the lock. It's not like sliding and locking really nice here. When I tuck the elbow, now it's not sliding nice and neat. It's like bending my wrist, and I'm losing ability to hold the gable grip. So it's a way to like break down the gable grip by adding weakness to the wrist and add some fear of them actually, if they don't let go or if they don't tap early, that their arm might get hurt, which is something to think about. It's like psychological, but it's good to do. You want to make sure that people respect your submissions. If I'm competing and every time I go for an armbar, I do it in the same way or in a way that doesn't threaten the armbar effectively, people aren't going to respect my armbar. So doing this makes people actually respect the armbar, because there's a double attack happening right away, or a triple attack depending on what you're doing. So if you're like forearms crushing as you do this, and then switch it to the Americana arm lock too, and the arm bars there, it's like a lot of things for someone to think about, and it makes them, they can't just rely on one armbar escape. So if he only tries to go for hitchhiker escape, and I have his arm in Americana armbar position, I call it the crooked armbar, when you do an armbar where their arm is like this, you can pop ligaments in people's elbows really fast. Like you can pop this, like there's a ligament here, the tennis elbow ligament, that when you do a crooked armbar, that's the first thing to go. So it's not like a straight armbar, which just hyperextends and then eventually dislocates your elbow. It actually just puts ligament pressure right away, and you feel it. They feel the stretch instantly, much faster than they would when their arm is fully extended. So it's something to do for sure. Voda, I'm pretty sure you can just click back in the actual live stream. And then remember, you can always get all the replays on KeenanOnline.com after. All right, let's do another one. On your back again. So now we're going to do the same one, same lock. There's a lot of different ways to break this position. We're just getting started in arm lock breaks here. So the next one I'm going to do is I'm going to collapse this structure, the rear naked choke structure, by bringing his elbows together. So my goal is to push the elbows together. And you can see by pushing the elbows together, it kind of destroys the lock, right? It's still kind of working, but now this arm is not gripped on the bicep, and the grip on the bicep is what makes this really strong. So if I can push the elbows together and then somehow get underneath this wrist here, I'll actually have pretty good leverage on the arm, right? So how am I going to do that? Good question. I use the leg side arm. So this is another situation where it's good to do if you have the leg side arm here. With the leg side arm, hooking and controlling, we lose a little bit of our control, but we gain some attack options on the arm itself. All right, so now this hand, the free hand nearest his head, is going to go underneath the wrist. See this? So there's a little bit of space right here. I'm just going underneath the wrist, but I don't stop there. I go underneath the other wrist as well. So now I'm under both wrists. So now when I take my arm out, this is the key, I take my arm out. So now I'm no longer holding this arm, but he still isn't escaping because I'm controlling his shoulders so effectively with my hips. My hips are compressing on this side, my ankle and my hands are pulling on the other side, so he shouldn't be able to rotate into me or turn too effectively here. Now, from this position, I'm holding and I'm pulling his elbows together, and my goal is to get my forearm underneath this hand here. As I get underneath this hand, I'm pulling everything tight and locking my arms around his lock. All right? Now from here, I just straighten my right leg. Straighten, and then bring it back over his face. So he has to try and maintain, everything relies on this hand, his left hand hooking under my hamstring here. Everything relies on this. If I try and open, it's not going to work. It's hard for me to open my leg up wide enough to get over his fingers. So I don't do that. I just drop it down directly towards his face. And he can try and hold on, but that's just going to uncurl his fingers as I pull up and in. And now I don't have to unwind his hands. I just go right through, locking it here at my arm. So it's going to be his biceps versus my whole posterior chain, right? His biceps are trying to curl in, and a lot of people are very strong here, actually. It's actually going to be pretty tough to finish. So I'm just pulling, 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 and I can just go directly into the force, which is fine. I'll eventually get through this because my back and legs are going to be stronger than his two arms, right? But you can make this a little easier on yourself while providing him with an escape opportunity, though. So you have to be careful. But if I fall to my left here, it's going to be a lot easier to break this grip. However, I have to be really prepared for the hitchhiker escape because he's going to try it immediately. And so the way to deal with that is actually something you kind of just witnessed on Miha's face, is I want to make sure that as I'm doing this, his face is turned towards me and my hamstring is pinched over his chin. All right, and you can achieve that from the beginning by bringing your hand underneath, and as I reach here and start pulling together, I use my elbow on his face. So I use my elbow on his face to keep his face turned towards me. And then when I put my leg back over, I keep his face there, like this. And then as I go up this way and start leaning this way, for him to turn back to hitchhiker, he has to turn his face all the way to the other side. So I'm pinching my hamstring on top of that. And even if he gets it turned out, it's okay. It's just trying to slow down the process, because once I break the grip, I have to bring it back to this side anyways. And it's not the end of the world. And then to counter hitchhiker escape too, I think we'll talk about that by itself, but one of the counters is just to figure four your legs over his shoulder, like this. So now if he tries to roll all the way through, the hook behind his back actually stops him from being able to twist too much, and he can't roll over his own head here with this lock. And you'll finish the armbar as he goes to his knees, basically. As he tries to go to the knees, the armbar is still there. But we'll go into that in a second. No, we actually haven't done the escapes yet. We're starting with the attacks. to deal with the defenses. Because there's defense, where they're holding, and then there's escapes. And the escapes are actually to get out. The defense is to stall, to try and get on top usually. So if they're stalling to try and wait to see an opportunity to get on top and stack you, that's a really good defense and counter in itself. But then the escapes are a little different. We're actually trying to just get out from the armbar itself. All right, let's break some of the other positions, the gable grip positions now.
Can I maybe get your thoughts on a rear naked choke defense that I do?
From armbar or from rear naked choke?
Armbar.
Sure.
From top.
Do you need the mic?
Not really.
Okay.
I think they're gonna hear. So the way I do it normally is I get this hand in, point the elbow down, and then turn everything here. So then I'm using kind of a sideways movement.
Yeah.
And then go back. Are you familiar with this one?
Yeah, that's like the easiest way to do it for sure, because you can get the wrist, you're pulling it in the direction. I just generally try and avoid going straight to that, because that's how people hitchhiker escape most effectively. Because there's not as, you're leaning that way to finish it most of the time, and in that motion of leaning, it's just from here to here where they have an opportunity to escape. Once you get it here, you're gonna finish the armbar usually, but it's just a small time where that can happen. So I try and prioritize switching first to really isolate that upper joint so that they don't have mobility.
Gotcha.
However, that's not to say I don't ever do that one. If I see an opportunity to grab the wrist and I can just pull it, I'm confident enough in my leg ability to keep them flat. But for a lot of people, they don't have that like control between their back and their legs, because there's like forward and back motion, there's like hip motion here, there's squeezing, and then there's the arm actual situation. So if it's like, if you just brute force it too early and you just focus on getting that arm, a lot of people who are less skilled than you in your coordination will lose a lot of control there. So it sacrifices some basic control, but it definitely works 100%. So what he just showed was just from the rear naked choke here. You tried to, it was left arm through, and you went here and here, yeah. It's kind of functioning the same idea. It's just pull, instead of trying to pull the arm out this way, it's pulling it off the arm, right? Just up. Yeah. Right. But the only problem is that if the arm is underneath and I try and lean this way too much, you can see how there's no weight on your chest. You can bridge into me, or hitchhiker escape is probably not as effective until I get the arm out. If you get the arm out, then the hitchhiker escape could potentially happen. But the main issue is just the initial lean towards the head, because there's no weight on your chest, and just a bridge into me will allow you to stack, and then you lose some of the arm pressure. But it's not bad by any means. So let's say now we're doing gable grip defense. Gable grip, this happens when you do a perfect arm bar. So it's like you set up the arm bar and you keep tension on the arms the whole time. So a good way to do this would be something like getting the wrist control super early. So like when I'm in mount and maybe he's defending in a normal way, and I set up my arm bar with wrist control rather than tricep and elbow control, okay? Tricep and elbow control is almost a guarantee to give them rear naked choke defense, but it's like the benefit is I have really good control over his shoulders. But if I go wrist control here, my arm bar is gonna be tougher to set up, but if I set it up, and when I set it up, he's not gonna be able to set up the rear naked choke defense at any point. Because you can see if he tries, it just doesn't go, because I have too much pressure on the arm already. And when I throw the leg over the head, there's just no opportunity for him to really tighten that up. So with gable grip control, I really have to focus heavily on this wrist here. So my elbow chokes up to his wrist as high as I can. The second thing is this arm. This is the pulling arm. So he's pulling with his lat on this side, really trying to pull that arm across. So crossing my ankles is really good here, because it kind of compresses that and relieves some of his pulling power. So now, instead of him being able to pull all the way down to the mat, he can only pull down to my ankles. So that takes a lot of his ability to move away. So this is kind of isolating the position. Same thing, tucking the elbow to the ribs is a really good option, because it allows you to do that same sort of shoulder lock, but you can do it while leaning more straight back rather than to the left, because I want to avoid leaning to the left as much as I can. So I get this wrist control. Grabbing your own collar is something you can do. If you feel like you're getting off balance still, grab the own collar instead of your own hands, and then you'll have this base here if he does try and bridge into you, right? And now from here, you can be strong enough to just pull here if you're strong enough. If you work out and you do your deadlifts like you should be doing, you can break this. But if not, I have to have some extra assistance, and there's a couple ways I can do it. My favorite way is just to put my heel on the inside of the arm. So I just bring my heel up, right on the inside of the arm, and I just kick to break, like that. Another option is basically the same thing, but instead of using your heel, you just put your whole leg through and you use that to try and break it, but it's not as effective. Some people like to try and do a full X like this, but this is overkill. You don't really need to. The easiest way is just the heel directly in the bicep and then lean in towards his legs and then kicking in the opposite direction, falling back and then immediately switching to thumb control. All right? The same thing applies too if you can get underneath the far elbow. You can do that same sort of elbow compression where I don't necessarily even need to pull at this wrist if I can pull at this elbow. If I just pull this elbow, this arm extends in the same way, and then you can just choke up to the wrist itself. So sometimes that's an option as well. All right? And then one of my favorites, which is pretty hard to pull off actually, is having your hand here and then using that as like a lever and fulcrum to get my hand to this side. So I'm just trying to get his wrist over my kneecap. So if you turn this way, you can see here, I'm trying to use that as like a way of pulling that wrist over my knees. So I have it here. I'm not just trying to put pressure to break the grip. I'm trying to get it over both my knees and then use my elbow on the inside to lock it here. So you can see it's pretty tough for him to maintain the grip, even if he has good gable grip. When I put my elbow like this and I trap it behind here like this, I can start driving my elbow back out of the position, and then I finish it by pulling the elbow up here to trap behind my arm. And this is very brutal because now there's really no escape. If you get an under armpit armbar on this side, there's no hitchhiker escape. There's no wriggling out of this one. Even if he tries to drive directly up, it's going to be tough. Yeah, there's a lot of different techniques you can use from here. A lot of different things. And then, not only that, but it's like really easy to take the back. Anytime you have the right hand grip and I'm pulling and someone's trying to sit up into you, it's really easy to just throw that leg up and over and transition to the back. It's always better to transition to the back than like tunnel vision on the arm bar. If you feel like he's about to get stacked, just take their back. Is pinching knees a must when pulling the arm bar? No, you don't have to at all. There's like 3 or 4 ways to put your legs that don't have squeezing involved, which is still an effective control. You should wear a cup, bro, if it's hurting you. Just wear a cup. There's nothing wrong with that.
I think even without that, you kind of get used to just setting it to the side of your...
Yeah, you just got to be able to control your junk, man. Just don't put it in the line of fire. Do you grab your own lapel during any of these? Only if you feel like you need to use that hand to base. It's better to focus on keeping your arms controlled because I've been talking a lot lately about how the ability to like individually your arms are weak, but when you put them together, they probably get a little bit stronger than the sum of their parts, right? Having them together starts incorporating the rest of your body. It's like your back is engaged, your core is engaged when you connect. But with just one arm, it's a little more off balanced. So the collar, grabbing the collar kind of does that same thing where it's like a little more unbalanced. But if you can focus with both of your arms, you can probably get a lot more force and have more mobility with your arms. But it's kind of up to you.
What about Dave's question there? Do you grab your own lapel ever?
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's only if you need to use that hand to base. If you really feel like you're on top of someone and they're bridging a lot, grabbing your own hand to base is all you're looking for. And it can be on either side, really. But using it to base and stay on top is one of the only reasons to do it, in my opinion. All right, let's get into some escapes now. So as the escapee, now that we know what the person's looking for on top, we also know what to avoid. So I definitely don't want to be letting my arm get to the crooked armbar position. That's one thing. But I also want to give myself the opportunity to hitchhiker escape if that time comes. And so this might be, it might be a little muffled because Miha's leg is going to be over the mic, but if it's like completely cutting out, let us know and we'll just move his leg. So let's talk a little bit about using the rear naked choke grip, since we started with that, using the rear naked choke grip to actually escape, not just hold, because a lot of times from what I've seen from lower belts is they get the rear naked choke grip and they really just hold on to it and they're trying to like have an endurance battle of whose arms are going to get tired first. But that's not super effective. Using it to get on top and stack is pretty effective, but let's look at a couple ways to actually escape from the bottom arm bar. We'll do this way, my right arm. So I get arm barred, but it was a nice clean arm bar setup, and I get my hand here, all right? So he's putting through with the right arm. So if he has the right arm through, this means that I have a better chance of sitting up, right? Because this arm, he's not able to put as much weight on my chest. Whereas if he attacks with the left arm and he leans this way, I can't actually sit up. Even though it looks like his balance is off to that side, the pressure of this leg, of him leaning over his own leg, keeps me down. And then he's able to push into my forehead with this leg by straightening it. So this makes it very difficult to sit up. So if I see someone reaching with the top side arm, my options of escape are actually that way. So if he leans this way, the options of escape are that way, right? If he has this arm through, the leg side arm through, my options of escape are that way. And that's going to be hard to remember, but just try and make a mental note that this arm is going to afford more escapes in this direction, and this arm is going to afford more escapes in this direction, okay? So this one, we can start here. So if he is here, and he's got this arm through, this leg is light, makes it easier for me to get up, right? And that doesn't just mean my body sitting up, but it also means my ability to lift him and move him in this direction. So when I have the rear naked choke grip, my goal is to do a crunch, but then use my arms to assist in the crunch. So if I just push with my left arm here, it's just my left tricep pushing to help me crunch. It's not as effective. But if I move my rear naked choke grip up to my wrist and turn my palm upwards, now I can push with both my hands to get this leg up. So I can use more of like a bench press pressure here to help me sit up. And at the same time, I use a little bit of momentum to do that, to lift and make him off balance here. That's all I really did, was a little off balance, all right? And I provided a strong frame behind this leg so he can't immediately drive it into my face to keep me down. So I'm not necessarily trying to sit up completely, which I could. One of the most common armbar escapes is to do that, swing your legs for momentum, sit up, and start to drive into your partner until you can stack him on his neck enough that from here he can't extend his body, and then eventually you can pull your arm out, right? But that's the one that everyone's trying to avoid. That's why he's, using proper grips and form to stop himself from getting tipped over. So if I slide my hand up here, I use a little momentum and I try and bring myself up here and I get stuck. This is fine. This is actually good for me because now I'm going to use my arm as like a guide rail to get my other hand through behind the knee. So now both hands are behind the knee. So what this does is it eliminates his ability to break my rear naked choke. Because here, maybe he tries to get his leg up and over the top of my elbow, the other side, other leg. Yeah, this one. So that would break it here. But it also works against those steps as well, because if you go to kick my leg off and I manage to have sat up already, so like go back. So I did the sit up, I get the hand behind. If he tries to kick my leg or my arm, it's fine. So getting this hand behind is actually a really good option from the rear naked choke grip because it's right there anyways. He's pulling your hand in that direction. You just have to create the space to actually get your hand in there. And then when you do it, you don't want to just have your fingers through because he'll be able to pull it still. So you want to get it nice and deep with a false grip over the shin. And now no matter how hard he kicks this leg, it's not really going to do much because it's just going to bend my arm down if he tries to extend it. It's a very strong grip actually. And with this, it makes it super easy to sit up and get on top because now I can push his ankle that way as well as I use momentum and I shift my hips to come up on top and start stacking. And there's no opportunity for him to just catch my arm and break it because I have the hand behind the leg and I just keep this ankle control and stack him until eventually I can pull my arm out safely. So I'm moving here to the wrist, pushing up. Let's do it one more time because it's kind of explaining all the steps as we went. So I feel the armbar coming on, I figure four and I get to here. I'm gonna try and lean up into him, but before I do that, I bring my hand to my wrist and I swing my legs and I get this hand behind. And I use my other hand to help me get that nice and deep, keep the grip on the ankle, and I'll do a little shrimp. So I like lift and shrimp to help me get up on top because if my legs are in this direction, it's harder to get up, right? So I can just like cheat a little bit by cutting the angle to help me just roll on top. Will be a little bit easier. And then when I drive up into him, I'm safe the whole time. My arm isn't extended and then I can just pull the arm out. All right? second and do another one here. So another good option from the armbar, whichever, up to you, here, like this. With the rear naked choke, it's very, very reliant on having my hand underneath this leg. And that's why I'm not a huge fan of it, because I don't have that many options. All of the options involve letting go of the position. So I don't like to go to this as my primary defense. It's more of like my emergency defense. Like if I don't know what's happening and so I feel the arm bar, I'm just gonna rear naked choke to slow things down until I can have a more understanding of the position of what's actually happening. But when it's actually time to defend, I actually prefer to go gable grip, okay? And the reason for that is because it lets me use this arm more. Whereas rear naked choke freezes this arm in place. I have to keep it underneath his leg to stay safe, or I have to keep it on my collar to stay safe, and I'm stuck. I've tied my own arms up, and yeah, I'm safe for a second, but it doesn't really give me a good escape opportunity. Whereas here, with this grip, it's a little more risky, because if he gets my wrist, I'm gonna be in trouble. But I have the benefit of like mobility, and if I act quickly, I can do a lot from here. So normally his leg would be over my face, but we'll just keep it like on my forehead for now. What I'm gonna do for this one is focus on getting under this leg now. So I use my elbow to get under this leg, like this. And this is gonna save me a lot, because a lot of the armbar power comes from him being able to drive his legs down into my chest on both sides and use that to pull against my locks, right? But if I can get underneath and lift this up here, when he tries to pull on my arm now, he loses a lot of power because this leg doesn't really have anything to drive off of, okay? And now from here, just lifting that leg up, I can bring my hand to this side as well. Getting your hand to this leg or to this leg are surprisingly effective one-armed armbar defenses. And you can do it from a safe place, like just having palm to palm, getting under, using even your own legs to help you get that position. So I'm kind of just like controlling this leg as much as I can and breaking away his foundation of control, which is his squeeze and his hip control. So right here, tucking under. If he's really pinching this down into my arm and I can't lift it, I use my own knee to create some space to drive that there. It's all good. And then I control the ankle as well. Because if I don't control the ankle, he can just open it up and potentially break my arm. So I control the ankle so that now when he tries to lean back, I'm pulling my head out to this side. So I'm removing myself from his control, which was his legs and his ability to control my ribs and all of that stuff. So from here, it's more of a scramble out of the position, because all I have to do is just start extending my arm away and looking to pull my arm out when I see the opportunity. Depending on what he does, he's probably gonna be fighting to face me again, and I'm gonna be controlling this leg and just looking for an opportunity to sit up and keep that arm straight and eventually defend, is one option. Another one of my favorite armbar defenses is going gable grip. And when I feel them breaking the position, maybe I couldn't get under his leg and they have too much tension already, but he's just controlling at my wrist. I really like this defense. It's probably my favorite. I like to bring my knee up, and as he's trying to pull to break the arm, I lift my leg up to catch in front of it here. So instead of using behind his knee, I use behind my own knee, like this, and I'll control my own ankle. So now, if he tries to pull my arm can be completely straight, but if I figure 4, he won't be able to finish the arm bar actually. So you can have it fully over my head, fully extended, and he shouldn't be able to finish because my own leg is providing a good enough ledge to hold on to. And this is surprisingly effective. I've used this on even some of the best grapplers in the world, and I can maintain the position for quite a while. It's very difficult for him to pull my hand out or do anything that makes it uncomfortable enough to actually free my leg.
I was actually trying really hard.
There are some specific counters to this, but you don't really see them very often, and I don't like to teach them because if no one knows about them, I don't want to ruin it for everyone because this is such a good defense. So here, lock the figure 4. Make sure your hand is false gripped again, not just the fingers. If I just have the fingers, he's going to be able to pull that grip off, so I have to go over completely and really lock that in place. And now to actually escape, we kind of treat it in the same way. I want to get the bottom side ankle control. Bottom side ankle control is very good because if I can bring this between my legs here, this takes all the power out of the armbar. So the second I can get this out of position, he could try and armbar me fully straight here, but it's going to be tough for him to actually finish if I'm struggling and resisting along the way, because all I have to do is duck my head in, and he loses so much of that power. So the goal of that is just to catch and then use that to get this leg between your legs. So I'm just gabled, lock, use that to get this leg between, hold on as long as I can until I can get my head in as well. If he's smart and sees what's happening, he's going to realize he's not going to get this leg back. He's going to try and take my back instead, right? Which is the smart move, but it's also good for me because it's like, well, at least I'm not getting armbarred anymore. But it's pretty easy to avoid as well, because when I'm here and he goes to try and take my back, I just keep my back flat. I just say, no, you have to keep armbarring me. I'm not going. And so you just resist it and you don't go into it. You don't go towards the light. He wants you to go towards the light. Don't do it. So when I'm here, I go towards the light on my terms, not on his. And the way to do that is to actually, it's a little counterintuitive. You bring this foot back again and you go under here. And now, once it's under the ankle, I don't want to go up too early because he's going to take my back. So I actually let go. Once, like, this grip is just temporary. It's just to get his leg to these positions. And then I go back to gable grip. Because now if he tries to do anything, I have this leg completely locked. He can't bring it back over my chest, and I just extend it up and away and use that to scramble and escape the position. Because the only thing that's keeping my elbow controlled is his ability to squeeze his hips, because otherwise I could just pull my elbow out, right? So I'm forcing him to open his leg here so that once I'm here like this, I can just turn into him because there's no control over my arm to keep it in place because I've separated his legs. All right. And then worst case scenario with this defense is you get your back taken, which isn't the end of the world. Like, it's not great, but you're already getting arm barred, so at least you didn't get submitted. And you try and defend and he takes your back anyways. And then when this happens, you're just trying to do your normal back escape stuff where you're clearing the arm and bringing your body to the opposite side and then turning in. Which there are very, very reliable back escapes that are going to be easier to get out of than an armbar, actually. Yeah, but false grip, I mean not using your palm. So if you use your palm on his body, your wrist is going to bend, and like whatever he does, your wrist might absorb some of that power. But if you go false grip, it's where your wrist is over the lock. So your wrist can't bend because it's locked over the top. So this would be normal grip. False grip is like a workout term, like where you grip over the bar like this. How do you keep the grip under your knee? You just lock it. You just figure four over it. He can't take your arm any other place. It's very good. Just try it before you make an assumption on it, because your hand's not going anywhere. Just make sure it's deep enough. Just make sure it's deep through and then locked. It's not going anywhere. Like your thigh and hamstring clamping down on your wrist makes it so that your hand can't come out because your knuckles are too big. How many of those work if their feet are crossed? You can still use them all if their feet are crossed. Nothing changes except one small thing. So if I'm here and we're doing the one I like the most, like this, and the feet are crossed, the main thing is I want to get my arm out of the cross, because that's where the cross is very powerful, is when my arm is in, because now I can't use it as much. But the benefit is when the feet are crossed, it's a lot easier to get your hands on the inside of things. So I can clear my hands out of the lock completely when this happens. And now I just have to choose, well, what are my escape options here? Well, I can try and put this leg between my legs, because look, if this leg's on top, this isn't going to stop me here. He would have to consciously have put the other leg on top, and now that might make it difficult. But in this case, I just grab both ankles and put them both in and figure four here. And this is equally effective at escaping, because I've still taken away his ability to finish arm locks. And I can still use my other hand to get through behind his knee if he's not focused on wrist control, which he won't be because he can't get my wrist. So I'm here controlling both, and I can bring my hand through or just use it to get up on top and start trying to climb up on top and just take him in a bad position where the arm lock is not as effective. So there's two more I want to go over. The hitchhiker escape and then the reverse hitchhiker escape. I haven't had much luck with the hitchhiker escape. I know it's one of the most popular arm lock escapes. I don't like to do it. I feel like it puts my shoulder and pec in a lot of danger. I don't like to risk it. I feel like I don't have very flexible shoulders. I don't feel like I want to put my arm there. Like I just don't want to do it. So I usually opt for the reverse hitchhiker escape. Hitchhiker escape is pretty straightforward. You're just eating it, like you're eating the arm bar. It's putting pressure on your elbow and your shoulder and your pec, but it's like a stretch, and sure, it's not going to dislocate anything, but you might tear something. I just don't like to risk it. I like to do those other escapes, which are a lot more controlled. It doesn't require speed. It doesn't require timing. It just requires proper grip switches. And then in really, really bad situations, when the arm is already getting fully extended, I don't like to turn it hitchhiker escape. I like to turn it reverse hitchhiker escape. So instead of going thumbs up for hitchhiking, you're going thumbs down.
Like finish him.
Yeah, like finish, like don't finish me. How about that? So here's what it looks like. So the goal here is, this is based on the Vinny Magalhaes armbar defense he used against Fabricio Verdum. So how this works is, it only works if my chest, my shoulder line goes from parallel to the ground to perpendicular. So as this happens, remember I said we're pointing our thumb down, right? So what this does is, one, we're hoping that he's falling this way anyways, because this is the way most of the time most people fall to stop the hitchhiker escape. So you can almost like make it look like you want a hitchhiker escape so that he leans this way. And when he leans this way to finish, that's when I'm going thumb down. And I go thumb down because this is going to allow me to get my shoulders up like this. But I wouldn't do it slow, I do it fast. But it has to be something where I don't just turn away. Turning away doesn't work, because turning away doesn't get my shoulder to the position I need it. I need my left shoulder as near his butt as possible. So I actually have to like lift my shoulders up and try and put this shoulder near his butt. And then by going thumb down like this, you can see that he can't actually get the arm lock, because once I go here and I'm turning away, my arm can be fully extended, but my elbow is not in danger. And I'm trying to hold on to his gi. That's the key. I go thumb down and grab something. This makes it much harder for him to twist my wrist back in the opposite direction, right? If he does twist in the opposite direction, it actually makes it very easy for me to bring my legs this way to sit up, okay? That's the key, is as he starts to turn my palm, if I let him do it, he's gonna armbar me. Like I can resist a little bit longer from here. Like you can see I can eat an armbar a lot longer than I would if my hips are flat. He's gonna have to fiddle with it more and get it over his hip and really try and get to a position. And if he doesn't control the thumb properly, it's gonna be tough. So it kind of gives you like a rubber arm, effectively, because it's just bending the wrong way. He's got to turn it 180 degrees to get it fully extended, and even still, it's pretty easy for me to just keep fighting my arm and turning it thumb down. And in the whole time that he's doing that, wrestling with my thumb direction, I'm just bringing my legs parallel to his body, getting up to my elbow, and just trying to shake him off in this direction. It's very effective. You can see me do this against Sean Roberts. Like very beginning of the match, he Sayanagi'd me right into an armbar, and I tried to do hitchhiker escape and it didn't work. I got stuck. So I had to do this one, like this. All right? Just the tricky part about it, the only hard part is just making sure that your shoulders move right. Because if he's going for the arm lock, I have to be quick, but I also can't do it wrong. So as he goes, I have to not just turn away, because my shoulder would stay pinned. I have to like shrimp into him and turn away at the same time. So I'm like moving into him and turning as he takes the arm. And this is what provides me the ability to keep my thumb down, gripping the material, and he's fighting to turn my thumb up. But even if he gets it up, it's like he has to like adjust his entire body now to get the arm lock. He's got to move, he has to go back perpendicular, he's got to line up his legs and then finish it. So if I continue walking with my legs towards him as he tries to continue finishing the arm lock, it's very easy for me to get to my elbow. And now, Miha, like, where would you go to try and finish the armbar? You'd have to try and get your hips around, right? Yeah. Exactly, and that makes it very difficult, because when he tries that, I can sit up more, and I can be turning out and controlling the arms and trying to get my legs out. So that's one that, like, you should practice. So you try and put yourself in that position and see how long you can last before they get the armbar. So make sure to tap when they do get your thumb up. But you'd be surprised how long you can hold out with your thumb down, and what, like, you have a lot of mobility. And I don't have flexible elbows or shoulders by any means, but being able to do that and be confident there and know that you're not in that much danger as you would be if your thumb was up is a very good thing. So if you want to see that one in action, search Keenan Cornelius for Sean Roberts. It was at Dan Lucard's gym at just an in-house tournament he had. But it's a good example of using that escape effectively in times of extreme duress. Like I was like dead to rights on this armbar, and I was able to get out using that technique. Maybe Chance can put a little clip of it in this video. All right, guys, we're going to finish up the class. We got through most of the stuff I wanted to get through. There are a few more things here and there, but they're smaller little micro details that don't need their own techniques necessarily. Maybe in the future we can kind of circle back and do a refresh. And Tia asked, just the final thing, when hitting an armbar from closed guard, how do you prevent getting stacked? I'm not sure the exact name of the video, Tia, but there was a class we did when Legion was still open where we talk about the traditional Jujikatami, which means armbar, basically, in Japanese. And there's a way to spin underneath them, and there's a whole video on it on Keenan Online, which you have access to, so make sure to log in. And I'll have Sunshine or Miha or Emma, or whoever can, will send you that video. Or I'll even do it if I can find it right after this. So instead of answering your question there, I'll send you that video. All right, thanks everyone for coming. Make sure, be here every day at 5 p.m. If you ever want to see the replays and the techniques cut up individually into what they are, you can go on KeenanOnline.com, where we have tons of instructionals just like this.
Mostly in even better quality.
Even better, yeah. So, yeah.
Encyclopedia and Mercs, we gotta mention.
Right, and so Lapel Encyclopedia. We have some big news coming for the Lapel Encyclopedia, a potential new chapter in the future. So now is a good time to get it while it's still on sale due to our crisis, because you get all future updates for free after your purchase. So it's a lifetime thing. And also our merchandise is still plugging along. Check the link in the description of the video to go pick up some Legion gear to support, and it helps our whole situation out over here.
Legion Live, code for 10% off.
Yes, 10% off if you use the code Legion Live. All right, thanks everyone for coming. Let's bow it out. Us. And we're gonna train a little bit. You wanna train?
Yep.
Tony? He's got headphones on? Maybe he'll join us. All right, we're gonna jump into training, guys. Thanks. Huh? Yeah, we'll keep it streaming. Just jump in for like 2 rounds. Sorry,
Hey, that video for Tia, your partner was Bruno, right?
I think so.
Is it that old? Yeah. People talking shit? No? Good. Oh, I have the microphone here. By Ilya, and we're going to fight to the death now. Well, I'm gonna die because it's only me and Keenan. So hope you guys enjoyed that. For everyone that's just joining in now and is wondering what's going on, if you rewind, you can see Keenan show a bunch of really good armbar breaks and defenses, or you can just stay live here and we're gonna roll in about a minute. Dude, I'm so sore. Oh my god. This is how you warm up? Is this proof, yoga approved? Opposite. If you want like 6 minutes to warm up, I can go on and on. It's up to you guys. Unless you want to jump straight in. You ready? Let's do it. Are you injured? Am I injured? Yeah. Are you saying you're gonna be? You wanna be? Are you? I'm just really sore. It's really cold. Yeah, we can start. Huh? I won't try and beat you up first. Where's the space, bro? Back up. A wild Tony appears. What was that? Already, it's not good. Too much water. Oh wow, we have someone that's mildly hating here in the chat from Poland. Let me brush off my Polish. Spierdalaj, kurwa. Co mówisz? No dawaj. Alright, back to English. We still have a guard passing battle here. Keenan's opting to work from the bottom. Tony's fine being in side control because Keenan can't submit him from bottom side control. Let's see what kind of trickery is afoot here. Tony, switch your hooks and do that pro wrestling move. Lose him as a friend. So if we analyze what Tony's doing or what he was doing right for like over half the round is something that probably anyone can take away when they're rolling with someone that's more experienced and better than them. And that is when you get a good position on them, you don't relinquish it. He was constantly improving his passing position and then eventually looking for the back. And just now, Keenan shrugged him off and got into an attacking position of his own. Time. Hey, Kid Wilson 33, when we reopen, you should still come to Open Mat. It's pretty legendary. There's at least like 100 people normally here. We'll see after COVID. Oh, I'm so full of water. The gym is in San Diego, 7550 Miramar Road. Also, we didn't say this yet. If anyone's in here that's not subscribed, make sure to subscribe because we go live every day, 5 p.m. Pacific, and you don't want to miss it. Good. I just got way too much. I feel it in my face. Like instantly.
Chris Mike's World. Very true. Eyes change.
Monkey low.
That's right. I think they all do. I think I learn. I gotta find my inner shark. Time.
All right, guys, let's see what we have here. Tony's passing guard, but that left leg of Keenan's is gonna be a problem. It's weird. Normally we have music, so I can talk shit really loudly on this microphone and they can't hear me, but not today. I would probably have to whisper. I looked away and Tony passed the guard. So let's see what he can do from here. He's trying to pass the lapel for extra control. He needs to tighten that up a little bit more. See how there's space between his arm and Keenan's body? Now he's setting up something nasty, but Keenan knows he's turning away. This is a Bravo choke, and it would work if Keenan went to the other side, but he's too wise to that. Nice block of a good back attempt there. Ooh, Keenan's most likely gonna turn into something nice here. But Tony does a great job recovering guard. He just needs to diversify here a little bit. Now he's getting into a purely defensive position, and probably his guard will get passed to the left. Yep, there we go. Let's see what happens. Ooh, Keenan has an arm potentially. Hey, what's ASMR? I'm not familiar with that. So this headgear that Tony's wearing, we got a question every single stream / video podcast. It's actually custom made, and there's been so many people asking that we want to manufacture our own, but there's this whole little pandemic going on, which is making that very hard. But we're working on making them available. Time.
I feel like Scott right now. Bourbon in the storm. Whoa.
Tony, legend has it that to get your headgear, someone needs to come and take it from you.
Oof.
That's the only way so far.
Fair. You just can't be a Legionite. Or I just like can't like you. And we're good. I think I'm taking it. It's like miscellaneous mysterious blood from somewhere. Yeah, I don't know where it's coming from. I don't know where it's from. It's not from me. This is my face.
You got something low on your nose. Maybe it got wiped off.
Sitting on your ass.
When did we roll last?
Wednesday. this close to. Huh? Like quarter of an inch and it would have been pretty. There's like a second sneaky bite like around here. I don't know what it is. It's called forearm thumbs. The weak ass forearm.
Ten seconds. Oh, time. Nice job. All right, guys, we're out of here. That's the end. Thanks for coming. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Dang, the stream is